Frank Norris's eyes fluttered open to a symphony of pain and a blinding light that seemed to pierce straight through his skull. The sterile room spun around him, unfamiliar devices beeping in patterns he couldn't comprehend, and the air tasted metallic and wrong. The last thing he remembered was the emergency evacuation from the mining colony on Kepler 62F when the seismic stabilizers failed. "The specimen has regained consciousness," announced a high-pitched warbling voice from somewhere beyond the light. Frank tried to lift his head, but sharp pain lanced through his entire body. He was strapped to what felt like an examination table, and when he attempted to move his fingers, even that small gesture sent waves of agony radiating up his arms. "Please," he managed to croak, his throat parched and raw. "Where am I?" What happened? A face moved into view, blocking the light. It wasn't human. The creature had 6 eyes arranged in a hexagonal pattern across a bulbous greenish-gray head. Its mouth was a vertical slit that pulsed slightly as it spoke, revealing rows of small, triangular teeth. "You are aboard the medical vessel Telumin," the alien said, its English surprisingly clear despite the odd inflection. "I am Chief Medical Officer Zrath. You were recovered from the debris field around the human mining colony. Most unfortunate about your companions." Frank's heart sank. "The others? They didn't make it?" "You were the only biological signature we detected among the wreckage," Zrath replied, moving something that looked like a scanning device over Frank's chest. "Fascinating. Your species possesses internal calcium phosphate support structures, correct? What you call bones." "Yes," Frank answered, his mind still struggling to process the reality that he was the lone survivor. "How bad am I hurt?" The alien made a sound like water being sucked down a drain, perhaps their version of a sigh. "I regret to inform you that your condition is quite severe. You have suffered multiple fractures throughout your skeletal system. By our count, 47 distinct breaks." 47? Frank gasped, the number hitting him like a physical blow. "How am I even conscious?" "Your pain management system is quite primitive," Zrath observed. "We have administered what we believe is an appropriate analgesic based on our limited knowledge of human physiology. My assistants, Grev and Lintic, are consulting our database for more information." 2 more aliens appeared in Frank's limited field of vision. They were similar to Zrath, but smaller, with more vibrant coloration to their skin, one bluish, the other with a purplish hue. "The human skeleton should be immobile during healing," said the blue one, presumably Grev. "Their medical texts suggest complete immobilization for severe fractures." Lintic, the purple one, made a clicking sound. "Correct. And human bone regeneration is remarkably slow. Full healing of multiple fractures could take their planetary cycles, months." Frank tried to process this information. "You're saying I'm going to be stuck like this for months?" "That would be the typical prognosis for your species," Zrath confirmed. "However, we are not limited to human medical technology. We will attempt to accelerate your healing process using our regenerative protocols, though they have never been tested on humans before." "Wait," Frank said, alarm rising in his voice. "Untested protocols? That doesn't sound—" "The alternative," Zrath interrupted, "would be to place you in stasis until we can return you to a human medical facility. The nearest one is 17 light years from our current position." Frank closed his eyes, trying to think through the haze of pain and medication. "Do you have any humans on board? Anyone who might know more about treating human injuries?" "I'm afraid not," Zrath replied. "Our vessel specializes in emergency response throughout this sector, but we have limited experience with your species." "You are the first human patient we have treated." "Great," Frank muttered. "Just my luck." Grev approached with what looked like a tablet. "We have compiled all available information on human skeletal repair. Based on our analysis, we recommend beginning with a procedure to stabilize the fractured bones using our organic bonding matrix." "What does that mean exactly?" Frank asked warily. We will inject a compound into your fracture sites that will harden and serve as a temporary internal support structure, Lintic explained. It is similar to what your people call a cast, but applied internally. That doesn't sound right, Frank said, his medical knowledge limited, but enough to know that humans didn't typically inject things directly into broken bones. Zrath made that strange sighing sound again. I understand your concerns. However, I must emphasize that without intervention, your injuries will take an extraordinarily long time to heal naturally, and some may heal improperly due to the lack of proper alignment. Frank weighed his options, which seemed depressingly limited. Will it hurt? We will ensure you are properly sedated, Zrath assured him. You will feel no pain during the procedure. After a moment's thought, Frank reluctantly agreed. All right, do what you need to do, just try not to make things worse. The aliens prepared for the procedure, moving with an efficiency that was somewhat reassuring. Frank watched as they arranged various tools and containers filled with shimmering substances he couldn't identify. We will now administer the sedative, Zrath announced, approaching with something that looked disturbingly like a pneumatic nail gun. This will render you unconscious for approximately 4 hours. Before Frank could protest the alarming appearance of the sedation device, Zrath pressed it against his neck. There was a soft hissing sound, and darkness quickly claimed him. When Frank regained consciousness, the pain had changed. Instead of the sharp, agonizing sensation he'd felt before, there was now a deep, throbbing ache throughout his body, punctuated by occasional twinges when he tried to move. The procedure appears to have been successful, Zrath's voice announced from nearby. The bonding matrix has adhered to all 47 fracture sites. Frank blinked, trying to clear his vision. I feel different. That is to be expected, Lintic said, moving closer to examine him. The matrix is designed to integrate with your bone tissue. It will gradually be replaced by your own cellular material as healing progresses. Frank attempted to wiggle his fingers and was surprised when they responded without sending him into paroxysms of pain. I can move a little. Yes, Grev confirmed. The matrix provides immediate structural support. However, we strongly advise against exerting yourself. The healing process has only just begun. Over the next few days, Frank's condition improved remarkably. The alien treatment seemed to be accelerating his recovery at a pace that would have been impossible with human medicine. By the 4th day, he was able to sit up with assistance, and by the end of the week, he could stand briefly, though his body still felt strange and heavy. Your progress exceeds our projections, Zrath noted during one of the regular examinations. The matrix appears to be enhancing your natural healing abilities. That's good, right? Frank asked, carefully flexing his arm. There was an odd sensation when he moved, not quite pain, but a peculiar resistance, as if his bones were pushing against something. It is unexpected, Zrath replied, which wasn't particularly reassuring. We have noticed some unusual readings in our scans. The matrix appears to be bonding with your skeletal structure in a way we had not anticipated. What does that mean? Is it dangerous? Not necessarily dangerous, Grev interjected, studying a holographic display of what Frank assumed was his skeleton. But the molecular structure of your bones is showing signs of increased density and rigidity. In simple terms, Lintic added, your bones are becoming significantly stronger than typical human bones. Frank wasn't sure if this was good news or not. Will they go back to normal eventually? The 3 aliens exchanged looks, their multiple eyes blinking in sequence. We cannot say with certainty, Zrath finally admitted. This is an unprecedented situation. As the days passed, Frank continued to regain his strength. The strange sensations in his bones persisted, sometimes intensifying when he exerted himself. 2 weeks after the procedure, he was walking around the medical bay unassisted, though with a careful, measured gait. We will be rendezvousing with a human vessel in approximately 3 days, Zrath informed him during breakfast on the 15th day. The food was a nutrient paste that the aliens had formulated based on their understanding of human dietary needs. It tasted like cardboard soaked in vitamin water, but it kept him alive. "That's great news," Frank said, genuinely relieved. Despite the alien's best efforts, he was eager to return to human medical care. "Thank you for everything you've done. I know I wasn't an easy case." "You have provided us with valuable data on human physiology," Zrath replied, which Frank supposed was their way of saying, "You're welcome. However, I must inform you of a concerning development." Frank set down his spoon. "What now?" "Our latest scans indicate that the bonding matrix has evolved beyond our initial programming," Zrath explained, bringing up a holographic image that showed Frank's skeleton. Unlike a normal human skeleton, this one had odd crystalline structures growing along the bones, particularly at the fracture sites. "What am I looking at?" Frank asked, unnerved by the image. "The matrix was designed to dissolve as your bones healed," Grev said. "Instead, it appears to be integrating permanently with your skeletal structure, creating a hybrid bone material we've never seen before." "Is it harmful?" Frank demanded, his appetite suddenly gone. "It does not appear to be causing any physiological distress," Lintic assured him. "In fact, it seems to be enhancing your structural integrity. The new bone material is approximately 3 times stronger than normal human bone, yet maintains similar flexibility." Frank stared at the hologram. "So I'm turning into some kind of bone monster?" "That characterization is inaccurate," Zrath said. "You remain human. Your bones are simply becoming enhanced." Before they could discuss this further, an alarm blared throughout the ship. The aliens' postures instantly changed, becoming rigid and alert. "What's happening?" Frank asked, rising from his seat. "Proximity alert," Zrath replied tersely. "An unidentified vessel has dropped out of FTL nearby. We are being scanned." The ship suddenly lurched, throwing Frank off balance. He caught himself against a wall and was surprised when his arm didn't hurt from the impact. "We are being pulled into a tractor field," Grev announced, his voice rising in pitch. "Communications are being jammed." "Pirates!" Lintic hissed, the vertical slit of her mouth narrowing to a thin line. "The Craxel raid these shipping lanes regularly. They target medical vessels for supplies and technology." Frank felt a surge of adrenaline. "What do we do?" "Our vessel is not equipped for combat," Zrath said grimly. "We are healers, not warriors. Standard protocol is to comply with their demands to minimize loss of life." The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. Klaxons wailed, and red emergency lighting replaced the normal illumination. "They've breached the outer hull," Grev reported, manipulating a control panel. "Security bulkheads are engaging, but they won't hold for long." Zrath turned to Frank. "You should return to the medical bay. It's the most secure area of the ship." Frank shook his head. "I'm not hiding while you face these pirates. I owe you my life." "This is not a matter for debate," Zrath insisted. "You are still recovering, and the Craxel are known for their brutality. They have no regard for alien life forms." Before they could argue further, a thunderous crash echoed through the corridor. The lights flickered, and Frank could hear the sound of metal being torn apart in the distance. "They're inside," Lintic whispered, her multiple eyes wide with fear. Zrath moved quickly, activating a panel on the wall. A compartment slid open, revealing what looked like sleek gun-shaped devices. The alien distributed them to Grev and Lintic. "What about me?" Frank asked. "These are neural disruptors," Zrath explained. "They are calibrated for our neurological systems. They would be useless in your hands." The sounds of destruction grew closer. Frank could hear harsh, guttural voices shouting commands in a language he didn't understand. "Get to the medical bay," Zrath ordered again, more firmly this time. "Lock yourself in the isolation chamber. It has reinforced walls." Reluctantly, Frank nodded and headed toward the medical bay. The ship's layout had become familiar over the past 2 weeks, and he navigated the corridors quickly despite the emergency lighting. Behind him, he heard the first exchanges of fire, a high-pitched whine that he assumed was the neural disruptors, and a deeper, more ominous sound that must have been the pirates' weapons. Frank reached the medical bay and sealed the door behind him. The isolation chamber was at the far end, a transparent enclosure designed for patients with contagious conditions. He started toward it, then stopped as he heard a scream of pain that he recognized as Lintick's voice. His conscience wouldn't allow him to hide while his saviors were being attacked. Looking around frantically, Frank searched for anything that might serve as a weapon. The medical bay was full of sophisticated equipment, but nothing obviously offensive. Then his eyes fell on a surgical laser cutter resting on a tray. He grabbed it, testing its weight in his hand. The device was designed for precision work, not combat, but it was better than nothing. Frank positioned himself beside the door, ready to ambush anyone who entered. He didn't have to wait long. The door slid open moments later, and a creature stooped to enter the room. This alien was nothing like Zrath and the others. It was massive, at least 7 feet tall, with leathery red-brown skin covered in bony protrusions. Its face was dominated by a wide mouth filled with jagged teeth, and it carried what was unmistakably a heavy energy weapon. Frank didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, activating the surgical laser and slashing at the pirate's weapon arm. The laser sliced through the creature's flesh with surprising ease, and it roared in pain, dropping its weapon. But instead of retreating, it swung its other arm in a powerful backhand that caught Frank squarely in the chest. The blow sent him flying across the room, crashing into a cabinet of medical supplies. The impact would have broken ribs in a normal human, but Frank felt only a dull thud. He rolled to his feet, surprised by both his resilience and his agility. The pirate charged, bellowing in rage. Frank dodged to the side, feeling a strange new awareness of his body's movements. The alien's momentum carried it past him, and Frank struck again with the laser, cutting deep into its back. The creature howled and spun around, its massive fist connecting with Frank's forearm as he tried to block. There was a sound like striking crystal, but no pain. The pirate looked as surprised as Frank felt. It stared at its own fist, which was now bleeding from several small puncture wounds. Frank glanced at his arm and saw something impossible. Where the alien had struck him, his skin had torn, but underneath was not the red muscle tissue he expected. Instead, gleaming crystalline structures protruded from his flesh, the enhanced bone material the aliens had described, now pushing through his skin like natural armor. The pirate backed away, uttering what sounded like a curse in its guttural language. Frank advanced, a plan forming in his mind. He deliberately slammed his fist into a metal cabinet, feeling his skin tear but experiencing no pain. The crystalline bone spurs extended further, creating what amounted to natural brass knuckles. The pirate raised its remaining arm in defense, but Frank was faster now, somehow lighter on his feet despite his enhanced skeleton. He drove his crystalline, reinforced fist into the alien's midsection, feeling the bone spurs penetrate the leathery hide. The creature doubled over, and Frank brought his knee up into its face. More bone spurs tearing through his pants and into the pirate's flesh. The alien collapsed, either unconscious or dead. Frank couldn't tell and didn't have time to check. He could hear more commotion in the corridor. Looking down at his hands, he saw the bone spurs were already retracting, the torn skin beginning to close around them. It was as if his enhanced skeleton was responding to his needs, becoming a weapon when required, and then withdrawing to avoid further damage to his own tissues. Frank picked up the fallen pirate's energy weapon and moved toward the door. In the corridor, he found chaos. 2 more pirates were advancing toward him, while further down the hallway, Zrath and Grev were pinned behind an overturned gurney, exchanging fire with another group of invaders. There was no sign of Lintick. Frank raised the alien weapon and fired, The recoil was substantial, but his reinforced arms absorbed it easily. The energy blast caught one of the pirates in the shoulder, spinning it around. The second pirate returned fire, forcing Frank to duck back into the medical bay. As he took cover, Frank felt a strange sensation throughout his body. The enhanced bones were shifting beneath his skin, responding to the threat. He looked at his forearm and watched in fascination as a sharp blade-like protrusion extended from his ulna, pushing through the skin of his wrist. "This is new," he muttered, flexing his hand. The bone blade extended about 6 inches from his wrist, wickedly sharp on both edges. He experimentally swung it through the air, finding it perfectly balanced. The pirates were approaching cautiously now. Frank waited until they reached the doorway, then sprang forward. The first pirate raised its weapon, but Frank's bone blade sliced through the barrel before it could fire. His other fist, now studded with crystalline knuckles again, smashed into the alien's face, dropping it immediately. The second pirate managed to fire once, the energy blast grazing Frank's shoulder. The impact spun him around, but where there should have been searing pain, he felt only pressure and heat. He recovered quickly and lunged forward, driving his bone blade into the pirate's torso. The creature gurgled and fell. Frank moved into the corridor, heading towards Zrath and Grev. As he advanced, more bone spurs emerged from his shoulders and spine, tearing through his shirt and creating a natural armor that deflected another energy blast from down the hall. "Frank!" Zrath called when he saw him. "What has happened to you?" "Your bonding matrix had some side effects," Frank replied, dropping to one knee beside the overturned gurney. "How many more of them are there?" "At least 5, Grev answered, staring at the bone protrusions with scientific fascination despite the dire situation. "They've taken control of the bridge and engine room." "Lintic?" Frank asked. Zrath's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. "Wounded, but alive. They've taken her to their ship as a hostage." Frank nodded grimly. "Then we need to get her back." "How?" Grev demanded. "We are medical personnel, not soldiers, and you, despite your adaptations, are still recovering from severe trauma." Frank raised his bone blade. "I think my recovery is coming along just fine. Besides, they're not expecting resistance from a human. That gives us the element of surprise." They formulated a quick plan. Zrath would create a diversion in the ship's environmental systems, triggering alarms in sections away from their intended path. Grev would guide Frank to the docking bay, where the pirate vessel was attached. As they prepared to split up, Frank concentrated on his new abilities, trying to understand the limits of his transformed body. He could feel the bone structures shifting beneath his skin, responding to his conscious and unconscious commands. It was as if the bonding matrix had created a new, symbiotic relationship with his skeletal system, allowing him unprecedented control. "Ready?" Zrath asked, his vertical mouth pulled tight with tension. Frank nodded, and they put their plan into action. Zrath disappeared into a maintenance tunnel, while Frank and Grev moved cautiously toward the ship's stern, where the docking bay was located. They encountered 2 more pirates en route. Frank dispatched them efficiently, his bone weapons proving devastatingly effective against the alien's tough hide. Each confrontation taught him more about his new abilities. He discovered he could extend bone spikes from his elbows for backward strikes, create shield-like plates across his chest and back for protection, and to even generate serrated edges along his forearms for parrying enemy weapons. When they reached the docking bay, they found 3 pirates loading medical supplies onto their ship. Lintic was visible through the open airlock, bound to a chair inside the pirate vessel. "We need a distraction," Grev whispered. "Something to draw them away from the ship." Frank looked around the bay, his eyes settling on a row of oxygen tanks used for patients with respiratory issues. "I have an idea. When they move away from the ship, get to Lintic. I'll handle the pirates." Before Grev could protest, Frank picked up a piece of debris and hurled it at the oxygen tanks. His enhanced strength sent the projectile flying with incredible speed, puncturing one of the tanks. The pressurized oxygen escaped with a high-pitched whistle, drawing the attention of all three pirates. As they moved to investigate, Frank emerged from cover, bone weapons extended from both arms. The first pirate barely had time to register his presence before a bone blade severed its weapon hand. The second managed to fire, but Frank had anticipated this, raising a plate-like bone shield that erupted from his forearm. The energy blast dissipated against it, leaving only a scorched mark. Frank closed the distance rapidly, his movements fluid and precise. The bone blade sliced through alien flesh with surgical precision. Within moments, all three pirates were down. "Impressive," came a deep voice from behind him. Frank turned to see what could only be the pirate captain emerging from the ship. This alien was larger than the others, with more elaborate bony protrusions on its natural armor and what appeared to be ceremonial scarring across its leathery face. It held Lintic in front of it, a wicked-looking blade pressed to her throat. "One more step and the doctor dies," the captain growled in surprisingly good English. Frank stopped, weighing his options. His bone weapons were still extended, gleaming under the bay's harsh lighting. "What are you?" the pirate captain asked, its eyes narrowing. "You look human, but fight like a Kryvax warrior." "I'm just a guy with broken bones," Frank replied, keeping his tone casual while his mind raced through possibilities. "Let the doctor go, and you can leave with your life." The captain laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Bold words from a lone fighter. "Do you think your bone tricks will save you from this?" It raised its other hand, revealing a compact energy pistol. Frank didn't flinch. "Last chance. Let her go." The captain snarled and fired. Frank dodged with inhuman speed, the enhanced reflexes another unexpected benefit of his transformation. As he moved, he concentrated on his right arm, willing the bones to change. The blade retracted, replaced by something new, a long, thin projection like a spear that extended rapidly from his palm. In one fluid motion, Frank hurled this bone spear. It flew true, piercing the captain's weapon hand. The energy pistol clattered to the floor, and the captain roared in pain, its grip on Lintic loosening just enough. Frank was already moving, crossing the distance in a blur. Bone blades extended from both forearms as he tackled the captain, driving it away from Lintic. They crashed to the deck, Frank on top, his bone weapons pressed against the alien's throat. "Surrender," Frank demanded. "Call your crew. Tell them to stand down." The captain glared up at him, hatred burning in its alien eyes, but it recognized defeat. Slowly, it reached for a communication device on its belt. "All units," it growled, "cease combat. Return to the ship immediately." Grev had already freed Lintic, who was shaken but largely unharmed. Together, they secured the pirate captain while Frank stood guard at the airlock. One by one, the remaining pirates returned, their weapons lowered in surrender. They cast fearful glances at Frank, whose bone armor and weapons made him look more alien than human. Word of his abilities had clearly spread among the invaders. When all the pirates were accounted for, Frank ordered them onto their ship. "Take your captain and go," he told them. "Spread the word that medical vessels in this sector are under protection." The pirates didn't argue. They retreated to their ship, dragging their wounded with them. Once the airlock sealed, Grev initiated the emergency undocking procedure, forcibly ejecting the pirate vessel. "That was unexpected," Zrath said when they regrouped on the bridge. The medical officer was studying Frank with scientific curiosity. "The bonding matrix has integrated with your system in ways we never anticipated." Frank looked down at his hands. The bone weapons had retracted, leaving only small, rapidly healing cuts in his skin. "Is it permanent?" "Based on these readings," Lintic said, examining a scanner, "the changes appear stable. The matrix has effectively rewritten the genetic instructions for your skeletal system. Your bones will continue to regenerate in this enhanced form." "What does that mean for me long term?" Frank asked. "Am I still human?" "Genetically, yes," Zrath assured him. This is merely an artificial evolution, an enhancement of your natural structure. Your reproductive cells appear unaffected, so any children you might have would be fully human. Frank absorbed this information. And these abilities? The weapons? The armor? A defensive adaptation, Grev explained. The Matrix was designed to repair and protect. When you were threatened, it interpreted that as damage to prevent and adapted accordingly. Can you reverse it? Frank wasn't sure if he wanted the answer to be yes or no. The three aliens exchanged glances. Theoretically, Zrath finally said, but the process would be extremely painful and potentially dangerous. It would mean breaking down and rebuilding your entire skeletal structure. Frank considered this. The transformation had saved their lives. Without it, they would all likely be dead or captives of the pirates, and while it was strange and somewhat disturbing, he couldn't deny there was something exhilarating about the power and control he now possessed. I think I'll keep it, he decided, at least for now, but I'd like to understand it better, to learn how to control it more precisely. We will help you, Lintic promised. Your condition represents a fascinating new frontier in adaptive medicine. With your permission, we would like to document your case for our medical archives. Frank smiled. I think I owe you that much, considering you saved my life. In the days that followed, as they continued toward the rendezvous with the human vessel, Frank worked with the alien doctors to explore the full extent of his new abilities. He learned to control the bone transformations with increasing precision, to extend and retract the weapons and armor at will, and even to shape the bone material into new forms he hadn't previously attempted. When they finally made contact with the human ship, a trading vessel called the Horizon, Frank had to make a decision. He could return to human space, where his condition would undoubtedly make him an object of scientific curiosity and potential military interest. Or he could continue with Zrath and the others, helping them understand his transformation while protecting their medical mission from future threats. The choice is yours, Zrath told him as they prepared for the transfer. But know that you would be welcome among us. Your unique abilities could save many lives. Frank looked at his hands, now appearing completely normal despite the extraordinary potential hidden beneath the skin. The past weeks had changed him in ways he never could have imagined. His bones, once broken and vulnerable, had become his greatest strength, literally a part of him that he could shape into weapons when needed, then return to their protective role within his body. I think, Frank said slowly, that my bones were broken for a reason. Maybe this is where I'm meant to be. The alien medical team welcomed his decision with their equivalent of smiles. As the Horizon departed without him, Frank felt no regret. His old life had ended in the mining colony disaster. This new existence, with its strange abilities and unexpected purpose, was just beginning. So, he asked, turning to Zrath, where do we go next? There must be plenty of patients out there who need help. Indeed there are, the alien doctor agreed, and with you aboard, we can reach those in even the most dangerous regions. Frank nodded, feeling the reassuring strength of his enhanced skeleton. From broken bones to living weapons, it wasn't the transformation he would have chosen, but it was one he could embrace. In a universe full of threats, he had become something unique, a human whose greatest weakness had become his greatest strength. And as the medical vessel engaged its FTL drive, heading toward distant stars and unknown patients, Frank knew that whatever challenges awaited, he would face them with the unbreakable resilience that now lived within his very bones.